meeting. It is now 3:03 p.m. on Monday, January 31st. Thank you for being here. This is our first return to in-person meeting of the year. And there is a little bit of background with regards to that I'm going to ask Manager Steve to talk to us about.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We're returning to in-person meetings because the state law that allowed for virtual public meetings to occur expired on December 31st. So beginning in the 1st, we were required to come back to in-person meetings. The city has chosen 5, I believe it is, boards or commissions, FFE being one of them, to also stream to maintain the element of connectivity online. So this is being streamed on Facebook and YouTube, as our other meetings were while we were still on Zoom. Just a couple notes is that we are observing the City Hall's meeting safety protocols. So there are, please wear a mask first of all, I'm glad to see everyone is. Then we have masks, hand sanitizer, and wipes available at the door. The rules are adopted by City Commission, and those were not in compliance with its compliance actions if they were not in compliance. So staff will ensure, like I say, PPE is available. We'll clean the room beforehand. And the meetings, like I say, are being streamed on YouTube and Facebook. There'll be an opportunity for public comment under item E of public comments. And at that time, people will be able to call into a phone number. I'll read that number at that time with the instructions. And that meeting line will be open for 1 minute if you don't receive any calls at the time. Do you have any questions on these changes? It is a big deal to be back in person after a couple of years, I know, so I appreciate your.
It's meeting.
All of our meetings are public. Yep.
Why is security trying to stop?
Please have a seat, sir. I don't know. You have to wear a mask to be in this meeting.
Oh, that might be why it says.
Yeah, that's probably why. Yep. Everybody in this meeting has to have a mask. So we'll just pause for a moment. Well, there we go. The mask has to be worn over your nose and mouth. We're all modeling the proper wearing of a mask. Pretty sure are you able to?
You're also modeling that discriminating people being able to come to public meetings.
We're all modeling the way to wear a mask properly, sir. Are you able to follow the model that we're providing? So it's a yes or no. If I don't hear yes, I'm going to have to call public safety as we just described in the rules for this meeting. So it's a yes or no. Is that a yes, sir? Can you follow the modeling of the mask if we're all provided?
Ordinance or suggestion.
Can you follow the modeling for the mask that we're all providing?
Yes. to enforce
Come on, just give us a break, will you? Just, please. We're just trying to run a meeting and be safe and abide by city commission stuff.
So I think, Director,
just-
my options at this point would be to adjourn the meeting. I think is really all that's available, or to follow the rules we just read off by calling KDPS. So I don't want to put that on you as directors. I don't believe that that's a position you all should be in. But what you can do is you can adjourn the meeting.
Right before you walked in, we were reading a little bit of background about the state law that allows for us to have these virtual public meetings so that more people can see them, not only virtually, but accessible, like what you mentioned. And part of that is following some of the protocols which call for a mask. So if you wouldn't mind, please wear a mask so we can continue the meeting and you can sit here and listen to what we have to say. I really appreciate it.
Is it a suggestion or?
At this point, I'm asked.
My understanding was it was rules approved by the city commission.
Yeah.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
So we have.
City Commission is adopting rules requiring all attendees. Yeah. So
The ordinance.
It is not a past ordinance. It is city commission recommendation for safety.
And feel free to call public safety and have you.
He just wants this. That's all there is to it. That's what he wants.
proceed with the meeting. I don't want to put anybody in jeopardy of an unsafe environment, but if you're comfortable, then we can proceed and address any issues with you to the next meeting.
I guess I'm gonna also ask for your suggestions on this. I don't want you to feel unsafe if somebody isn't following our safety protocols, but I also do understand that having this communication is really important, especially for people who take time out of their day to make sure that this happens and is accessible virtually so that the city can be aware of what's happening. So if we were to not go through with this and not make this information available to the people based on the actions of one person, it's just
A counterpoint would be,
here, but you know,
I would offer as well that since this is being live streamed, that if somebody was watching this and intended to come in the future and saw that the protocol were being abided, that might be a dissuasion for them to attend, just as a counterpoint.
I understand. So I'm gonna wait for Laura to finish talking to
Yep,
him and then
understand.
basically like, okay, it's gonna be
Understandable.
I apologize for that.
No apologies. It's not your.
Appreciate it.
No,
Appreciate
but
That's needed.
I know that probably. We're just gonna follow the
Okay.
Well, I guess I just want to mention that, you know, sir, we did give you the option.
Excellent. And that's been done, no action needed from us, super. Thanks so much. So Madam President, with that, I would move on to approval of minutes, which is item B1. And so those are on page 5 of the agenda, and these are from the December 13th meeting. So in that case, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Barb Miller. Support.
Excellent. With that, you can bring it to a vote, and you actually,
Yeah, so actually, if there isn't any concerns or questions, I would like to call for us to approve the minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing that there are none, the motion carries to approve the minutes from December 13th. The next item on the agenda is reports and communications, at which point I will ask Steve to please talk us through that.
thank you. We don't have any reports of communications today. So on to item D1, we have approval board agenda for February. And that's on page 6 of the agenda. And if you flip actually to page 8, you'll see the demo of the agenda that we have each time. And so that shows return to person meeting rules, that shows approval of minutes, finance committee report, staff report, executive committee report. So flipping back to 6, there's just more kind of verbal update on those particular items. And so there's a couple of main items we're going to bring is that in 2023, the revenue to the city from the Foundation for Excellence will for the first time coming from the endowment. And so that means that this year really is an important year of building out our understanding of the endowment itself, board involvement, further board training. So our 2022 is really about continuing the work we've done for the past 4 or 5 years to build out the board's management of the endowment. And so we're going to be on a series of conversations and decision steps over this year to just make sure that come this time next year, we got where we needed to be. So the first report will be from the finance committee, and that's going to include a discussion about the FFE's endowment status and projected future valuation, as well as some options that the board needs to consider to take action in 2022. So as you can understand, we received the quarterly updates from the finance subcommittee, which is the actual investing the dollars and producing reports about where it stands and its value. But then the board's decision on top of that is what is its projected value over a 5, a 10, a 20-year period, and then understanding, their stance in relationship to decisions that might need to be made about its future valuation. So for us, that's really a co-learning journey that we would go on of understanding terminology and just really as a board, because we're not a board comprised of finance experts, making sure that we all have the information and the awareness and the shared language to move those things forward. So we had to cancel today's finance meeting because of a lack of a forum, because of illness, but and a family member attendance. But that meeting is really about the next one when we reschedule will be about coming up with what does the finance committee need to see to present to the board to shape that conversation. You know, what matter of information, research, and materials should be brought up, because staff's instinct is going to be a bunch of spreadsheets, right, and a bunch of charts. So that is a very, very important piece, but we want to make sure that we're meeting everybody where they are, and then continuing to improve how we communicate with board members going forward.
And
So there will be a finance report before our next board of directors meeting.
In the packet, yes.
In the packet, okay. Okay,
that's not to say we're going to schedule the finance before our February meeting.
We will for sure. So the
Okay.
finance committee will meet,
Okay.
and then those minutes can be shared out, of course, and then they'll be prepped for the actual board meeting itself. So, and again, we realize, you know, some people are comfortable on a computer screen, some are more comfortable in printed material if it's, you know, detailed kind of financial reporting. So we'll make sure to just have that however people want it available with time to ask questions and synthesize.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know one of the things that's been increasingly important as we understand our roles as ambassadors is being able to absorb that information in order to be able to share it with.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for that.
The staff report will continue that theme certainly of this year of updating boards of directors and moving together to keep developing the FFP. So top level item is that this is actually the 5th anniversary year that we're in for the Foundation for Excellence. So that's worthy of acknowledging for a couple of reasons. We'll be doing some extra communications pieces just to make sure that we get that out to the public. And then we'll be doing ongoing ambassador work, which is going to be what we started last fall, getting tools in all of your hands, offering up events that you might attend, interested in kind of sharing and listening and feedback from the community that are relevant to FFP. And with that also board trainings, like I say, for financial analysis, not even analysis, but just being able to look at the materials and just really building that organization as well, because it's not so much the decision as who decides and how it decides, right? So the board takes in new members each year. So how do we make sure that in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years, we still have that basis of really powerful, positive board culture to work from, where people are communicating properly, knowing how to ask the right questions, feeling empowered to ask the questions, which can often be difficult, right? Especially if it's at a public meeting, you just have to feel like you really got the essence you need to ask the question. So those will be the major pieces of staff reports. We'll probably also show a look forward to some communication strategies we'll be doing this fall, which is pretty exciting. I won't say too much now, but just we're going to try to up our game a little bit with talking about areas of investment such as affordable housing, economic development, and so on. And then the executive committee report would be any items that this committee wants to bring forward, but primarily would be the memorandum of understanding that will need to exist between the city and the foundation for the grant starting next year. So the foundation will be granting a sum of money to the city in fulfillment of its duties. With that would come typically what we call an MOU or a grant agreement. And so that will be the next item that we have on the agenda, where what we can actually go through it in some detail, and then since we want to research. So as of now, those are the items on the agenda for February 15th. I would expect pretty broad-ranging, diverse conversation. And of course, this is also in addition to anything that the executive committee would like to lift up or center at that meeting. So with that, Madam President, we'd be looking to approve the board agenda for the 15th. And as usual, staff would just go ahead and go ahead with that for the February 15th.
I just have one question. If there are some additional items for that agenda, can we bring them up now?
You sure should, and those will be reflected in the minutes,
Okay.
and then they'll be added to the draft agenda. So
I guess with what you were mentioning as far as, ongoing board ambassador work and continuing forward to make sure that there's that staggering of different directors and positions. And then, of course, keeping in mind our elected officials as well. I was wondering, would that be an appropriate time to ask about this last, that's actually ending, I believe, today, or it ended on Friday, where we were accepting the applications? Is that an appropriate time to kind of ask where we're at as far as how many applications we've received, what areas maybe we did not get applications in, so that we can reach out to our community partners, agencies about aiding any recruitment for those areas? And that's about it. I think I had some questions around that, and I thought maybe that might be a good time to bring that up.
Absolutely. And so we could do board application update at that next meeting. If you've got particular questions that are sort of time sensitive now, we can absolutely discuss those under maybe board comments, just as a side
No
note.
problem.
So
Thank
we'll
you.
update that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Alrighty, so with that, then the next thing would be for motion to approve the agenda.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you.
Support.
You can tell who's saying what.
Yeah, that's true. You can. So, thank you for that. And so, at this time,
So then you call for a vote.
for a vote. So all of those who agree with that.
Approve the agenda.
Okay,
Excellent.
all right. And there's nobody to say no, so that carries.
So perhaps I should ask, are we going to bring forward the slate of folks? Will commission be getting the slate?
And the next one.
Yes. So can we hold this to board comments where you can discuss?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's kind of between agenda items. But
Okay, thank
absolutely,
you.
I can update that. So we would be now on to D2, Madam President.
All right. And you said that we were going to be looking at the MOU you were just talking about between the
Yep.
city and the FFP.
Absolutely. So I already covered really the broad stroke that needs to be covered for this. And the bylaws are quoted here under background on page 10. I believe it's 10. It's actually cut off on my paper, but
Yeah.
D2, the agenda memo. And the salient point here is that since this will be a conveyance document, it's a legal contract, that this is subject to board approval as a document, and of course, as a board vote, the president will be empowered to sign it at the time. So, but we work through the committee structure here, of course, and so executive committee will see this MOU first, which starts on page, well, again, I'm cut off, I apologize. Yeah,
It looks like
12. And so we're not looking to approve this right now. What we're looking to do is just advance it to the board so that the board would have it in its packet and can review it. We would expect this to probably have a lot of positive comments and markups to it. It has been seen by staff and preliminarily by the city attorney, but documents of this kind have a lot of working pieces to them. And we have a lot of expertise on the board in nonprofit field, in kind of related fields, executive directors of nonprofits. So we will definitely rely on that. Once it's approved in the end for next year, of course, it's a public document. It's just part of the record of the city and the FFP's document library. So it's important we get it right and that we feel confident moving forward with it as the relationship instrument, if you will, between the city and FFP. We would expect this to also be annual because it's an annual grant. So that annual grant gives that opportunity with a new MOU each year to, improve as needed, to follow through on compliance and things of that nature. What I would highlight is just the section heading. So in this MOU, we start with the purpose of the investment, so that baselines us back on Kalamazoo and the bylaws of the FFP. Scope of services is item 2, and that shows what FFP is responsible for and what the city is responsible for. Section 3, duration of agreement, which would be the annual grant to the city. And then item 4 would be budgeted payment. So that would convey what the actual budget request is each year. And then it structures where the payments go to the city. Now, a side note here, because this does look a titch complicated, is that the longer the dollars are invested in the endowment, the more they earn and the more positive they are for the endowment and the community. So what we would do is we would approve the sum at the beginning of the year, And then those actual expenditures would be meted out as you see here quarterly, so that we don't have dollars that aren't earning interest, for say 3, 6, or
For
9
less,
months. in a year.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so this structures that up front and makes it very clear when the dollars are being given. Performance, we have under item 5. So this gives a time period of performance. And then under item B, we have tracking and progress reports. And item C, modifications. So those would be the actual detailed ways that we would look at what's quantifiable, what's qualifiable, what is or isn't going to be measured for what's considered positive performance by the city. And the modifications is under C. So if we had, for example, you see under item 3, a mid-year emergency request with a specific amount for something, this gives the rules for how you would talk to the city commission itself in order to, for them to request a mid-year from the FFA. So it's a complex system, but when you get down to it, the baseline is to have the most positive possible and clearest documentation between the two organizations of, what should happen when, why, and on what terms. Beyond that, specific conditions and communications and promotions, those kind of are pretty straightforward. Non-compliance would be essentially the accountability arm of the document. So, at the end of the day, if there are terms of what performance looks like, and those aren't met, what are the conditions that the grantor, which is the FFB, has to try to improve that performance by the recipient?
And is that going to be, I'm sorry, we can ask this later, but is it going to be quarterly since that's how the money is distributed? Because it's the only time that it would be not distributed.
That's a very tricky question. And where we fall is that probably compliance has to be on an annual cycle, because something like a road project or a park project
Might not fall in that same quarter.
exactly. They might, they don't have proof of product until, say November for a road project. So we're really be juggling, and the FFE right now this year we're funding, if you break it down, 50+ projects. So at that point, we're trying to match just the resolution and capacity, right? So we'll do the compliance on an annual basis, because that's when we'll have final numbers from everything. To say that you're not compliant in May when you still have 48 other projects working, so it would be really impossible to juggle those. So, but the check-ins being documented would be very, very helpful as we move through the year towards that kind of end of the compliance piece.
Clarifying question. When you, in part C under 3 for modifications, is this similar to what was already being done after we came across the pandemic, just within the last couple of years here, where we had to kind of move quickly on certain projects based on, so for instance, so same type of, so it's not totally foreign, something we've
Not
said
at all.
before.
It's not at all.
Okay.
It's and in that case, of course, it's from the fund balance of the city. In this case, everything stays in the endowment. So that's why we want to make sure that we had a new process for the city commission to talk to the board mid-year, right?
Okay.
So if we had, let's say, a flood occurred in May, city commission said we really need extra support. They would then have a mechanism to go through and request, and then we could call a special meeting. We would know where the authority was. You could all sit down with that commission request. So that really creates that chain of events to keep everything very streamlined. Yeah, exactly. And of course, since everything happens at public meetings, it's already bureaucratic enough.
Right.
But we want to make sure that everything's documented in those ways, so if there was a special request, we have the terms. And by all means, if you see loopholes or challenges, any of these, please bring them up, because this can always be improved with other kind of what if questions. A lot of these things are always improved with, well, what about, what if, and we could game out some of those possibilities. So I think from executive committee standpoint, I'm happy to answer any questions I can. If you could read through this, I think what falls on you as a committee is the ability to just maybe be a little bit more comfortable with it than the board when we see them, and to be kind of maybe leaders in the discussion about challenges you saw or what ifs that you saw. Because, of course, we want everybody to spend as much time reading as possible. We do have to have that balance. So And this is not action oriented, so this was already approved as a topic to move on to the next February board agenda.
You
So
said that Attorney Robinson has looked this over.
yes. And I'm sure he'll see it several times more. This is the way things go with MOUs, so we've been good to splash draft on.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Madam President.
And I think it's really important that we are talking about that relationship between the city and the FFE. With having this been an election year that we just came up, I will save my comments for the board member comments area, but we'll put a pin on that. And so moving on from the agenda, we are at section E, which is for public comments. And at this time, could you please check to see if we have any calls coming in?
So with that, Madam President, we all say to any viewers at home that the lines will be open for a minute for anyone to call 269-568-3307. So that number again is 269-568-3307. And I'd like to say when you call that number, it will say for City Commission. That's because it's the single phone line for all of the boards and commissions associated with the City of Kalamazoo. But you will get through to this meeting. And when we see your call come through, we will let that through. In the meantime, if there's anyone who would like to address the board in public, sir, you have 3 minutes.
Where should I stand?
Make sure that you're away.
All right, not a problem. So I came to City Hall today. I was,
Can we get your name and where you live, please?
the Attorney General has said that he cannot.
Oh my
remain Senator.
gosh. Okay, never mind.
Thank you, Mark. Surprised you don't know my name already.
I do. I just wanted the public to know.
So this is part of the issue. People should feel safe when they have no power, when they have no authority, when they have no privilege to be able to address somebody with power and privilege like you. They can be frightened when you don't have friends in positions of power. Even when they're just saying simple things. If you ask for a silly little thing to improve the KRV, there's nothing ominous about that, but some people will retaliate. Or if you want to be able to, I don't know, bring a service dog into City Hall. They tried to arrest me. They called the police on me today. Just now, Laura Lamb, Deputy City Manager. This entire board encouraged that behavior to try to intimidate me, to force me against my will for use of the police. People that walk around with badges and guns. People that can put me in handcuffs and take me to jail and ask questions later. That's not comfortable. That's wrong. The trust is broken and it needs to change. You guys have $500 million for the next 10 years. That's power in this type of society. That's intimidating. And if someone just wants to come in and sit at the meeting, security guard follows them all the way saying, sir, sir, for what?
30 seconds remaining.
Why is it such a big deal to just sit in the office? This was the case even before COVID. Your notice is not downstairs or outside on the wall. You have to really try to be able to come to these meetings. Over and beyond your ordinary citizen. Thank you for your time.
3 minutes. Thank you, sir. Have we had any call-ins, Carrie? Okay, thank you. Public comment period is over, Madam President. I appreciate that. We're on to item F, which is board member comments.
Well, first off, Sir, I appreciate you being here today and taking the courage to speak. You should be able to bring your service animal, following all of the rules that you would follow to bring a service animal into a public building. I was not with you, neither was anybody in this room when you came in through the doors today, so I don't know what your experience was until you walked in. I do know that it is my suspicion that the gentlemen downstairs were simply trying to enforce what is part of their job with regards to the face mask requirement that is posted everywhere in this building. There are many ways for this meeting to be attended. You are here exercising your right for one of those, which is to be in this room. There are people who are listening today on the internet because they couldn't be here for whatever reason and they're interested. These are also recorded for later use. So as of right now, with the circumstances and how it is, I believe that we're providing a lot of different ways for these meetings to be accessible. And it's my hopes for yourself and for others in the future to want to participate in these meetings and in your rights for running for public office and other things like that. Because you're right, the average citizen should have just as many rights as everyone else to be able to participate in the betterment of their livelihood and that of their community. However, we all have to coexist and we all have to follow rules in order to do so safely. So to just ask in the future that you consider that and give grace to those who are just in a position like the gentleman you encountered downstairs, doing their jobs and trying to enforce what they've been told is part of their job. So I do thank you for being here today, and I just hope that you do give everyone else the same grace that you're asking for. Moving forward in the spirit of wanting to work together, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is, outlining the relationship between the foundation and the city. And I think that calling more attention to that relationship and really outlining it in a public, continuing to outline that in a public forum is a good thing for everyone who is involved in this process. Secondly, I just want to say that I really want to uplift and congratulate and welcome our new city commissioners, City Commissioner Kiana Decker, Commissioner Esteban Juarez, Commissioner Stephanie Hoffman, who's amazing, and of course, Vice Mayor and return Commissioner Don Coogan. And so I really look forward to the continuing relationship between the FFB and the City Commission. And I hope that it can continue to bring prosperity to the city members. That's all I wanted to say. And I know today's been a little bit of a different meeting, but I am glad that we were all here today. And is there any other comments from any other board members?
I just wanted to ask Steve, I know you said something about maybe some kind of a hybrid meeting. Should we put that in our bylaws somehow, or is that not possible? I don't really know where you guys are with that. If some people are home.
If you're virtual, you cannot vote.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
You can-
statewide.
Yeah,
Okay,
you can comment, you can participate in discussion, but you cannot vote.
because I know the investment committee has in their bylaws a place where they can vote virtually.
I can investigate that. I think it's worth looking into just to make sure that we've got everything covered. So that would be, I think the topic is virtual or proxy voting, because and I just have to look into
Yeah.
what's possible there. So great questions.
And the other thing is just, I think we need to keep reiterating, I see time and time again where people think we already have the money,
Yes.
500 million, and that's not true. And I think we just need to keep saying, that's not where we are yet. It's coming, but down the road.
I would like to ask and maybe just highlight, Steve, that all of this information is also available on the city, the community publication.
Yep.
All of this information is also available on the city council's website.
I know that we're on that foundation and a report from you and your staff is on the committee of the whole agenda
Mhm.
for commission in February, is it?
March 7th.
March 7th? Okay, so,
Sure, I hope it's March.
great, great, good, yeah, we messed it out. So it'll be after the MOU has been adopted?
No, we would expect the MOU to be seen and reviewed and at the soonest approved for use at the April meeting.
Oh, the
But-
April.
But Frank, it could also be the August meeting. It won't really be needed because what we envision is that it would be adopted with the budget. So in the FFE item that we've been doing, the same kind of approach for the last 5 years, is that it would be approving the budget and approving the city manager directing them to sign the agreement. So those would happen depending on the weather, of course, in those first couple weeks of January each year when the budget goes through. So we do have some time. What staff is doing already is kind of what we call sandboxing the agreement. So it's a really big deal. There's a lot of moving pieces. So we're just tuned to kind of walking through it this year and asking, if this was actually in place already, how would we be working with it? So that we've got good experience and good kind of insights next year. And so this feathers into that. It's just having time to treat it as though it's a real document and kind of work inside the city systems. We might find that, one date would work better than another, that kind of thing for different payments or compliance pieces. So,
Okay,
but it could be approved really even as late as the October meeting.
Okay, so-
As a document.
will you mention it, that it's a possibility that we're working on this?
Most certainly, yeah. We'll mention that we're working on it.
And is it mostly you're gonna be putting forth the projects that foundation is supporting at this point?
So the March meeting is a look forward to the way that we're hoping to report areas of investment this fall. And so I can just do a kind of a brief overview of that is that, so in the committees of the whole commission meetings in the fall, oftentimes we request an update from one department or another. And then those groups often also report to the board here, the FFE board. They might also report to 2 or 3 other boards. And so you have meetings that are kind of redundant. Oftentimes they have the same people involved, commissioners and liaisons. And so what we envisioned was standardizing the process a little bit so that people in goal areas are presenting in a similar way. Here's the challenge in the community. Here's the who, what, where, when, why. Here's how we're addressing it through programs. Here's what success will look like. Here's how we're tracking that. And then really having committee of the whole meetings that show that. Those are public and broadcast, so we could then invite everyone to either attend or watch at home because all of those committees are hybrid.
Sure.
And really could take one step forward in kind of updating and documenting the work that was done in the whole area every year. So the committee, so what we're doing on March 7th is bringing awareness to that process and doing a quick preview of the projects. We don't expect it to be a deep dive into any one project, of course, because it's still so early.
And so that would address Director Miller's question about future projects.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Super.
And when will the appointees come to commission? So can you tell us how many applications we have?
The board application closed on 2/28, which was Friday. So excuse me, 1/28.
And technically, the window is still open, so there, a couple people could have snuck in. So I don't know what that looks like on your end. but-
So 1/28, January 28th, and those went to the Community Foundation, which is the governance facilitator for the process. I haven't even touched base with them yet on what has filtered out for numbers. It's in this, I think, in a couple dozen range, several dozen range, what I do remember. So we're working with them to just make sure, if we needed to extend the deadline, we theoretically could. But I think if we're historically the same number of applications as in the past, then we would move ahead. And they're always seeking to balance those 3 diversities. So diversity of experience, diversity of viewpoint, diversity of skills to bring to the board. And so those are what they're trying to balance. So if they felt, that there were just the skills weren't there for the applications or the other 2 that I mentioned that they've been talking to us. So in terms of the cadence, I don't have the timeline right in front of me, but we would be seeking we bring the slate forward for all four of them in March, and then that would move us into being able to approve it at the April Foundation Excellence meeting.
Okay.
So it would be, there's one of the two meetings, I don't have it actually on the agenda at this point for which one in March, but I believe we're aiming for the first one, so.
To kind of expand on that, since those applications are with the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, would they be the ones that more or less, I guess, weed out, for like the better way to put it, like,
It's like,
well, yeah, as far as, I guess more specifically, my question was around any conflicts.
So
For instance, people who already work for certain agencies and things like that.
So the governance facilitator builds a stakeholder committee in each area. And this year it's business and banking, it's healthcare, and it is housing. Thank you.
And so the at large would not go
In my
through
heart,
the same process. I know.
in my heart, Stephanie Hoffman is still enough.
She's still, like, will we know if she's going to come on as our commissioner vacancy, since
You would. So there's two tracks here. One are the stakeholder directors. And so the stakeholder groups convened by the Community Foundation comes up with a final slate that they then themselves balance out with the other directors for diversity, for all those dimensions I mentioned, to come up with a slate. The at-large director, they'll make recommendations, but you'll see, city commission will see the application list, because ultimately they have control over that one appointment of at-large. So the final number of at-large applications we'll know this week, but I apologize, it is a bit of an art, it's sort of arcane seeming process, there's a lot of moving pieces, but it is part and parcel with the check and balance, so that, as you say, conflicts of interest
yes,
are kind of washed out across the whole system, and that you have a balance of the public, an independent organization that's been trusted for 100 years, the city commission, city staff. So it's really seeking to make sure that it is that grassroots and diverse slate and final approval that everybody wanted in the spirit of the FFP.
and the transparency is certainly there. So yeah. Thank you.
thank you for that, because there are a lot of moving parts. And as much as I hate spreadsheets, the one that you have for this particular reason is your best friend. There's a lot of the way that works there. All right, so if nobody else has any comments, I would like to adjourn this meeting.
So, right.
All right. We have to
Sure. At 3:45.
adjourn at 3:45.